Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one way that I've seen that we can help navigate this ocean of disinformation is to really create a an environment, a learning environment where everyone is safe to be wrong. And so
Yeah.
I've there's there's a big difference in people who know that they're wrong and they continue to sow like seeds of disinformation out of this out of a need to be popular or to make money or whatever. That's just that's a moral issue. But I guess I guess one thing that I've observed about learning in education spaces is how we can, and I hate the term like safe space really, but it's more in this regard of like how can we hold our mm, hold the truth in a way that isn't at gunpoint basically. Like if you don't have the truth and if you don't know the truth and what you're purporting is wrong, that it doesn't have to be your whole character is uh, brought into question or whatever, where people can actually be like, oh yeah, I was wrong about that. And in this group of people, I'm allowed to be wrong. And actually, I feel like I don't have my guard up and need to protect this wrongness,
Mhm.
So uh, it's it's a it's a learning process on our behalf of how to navigate in this realm because a lot of I personally want to have conversations with academics and also uh, there's been a little bit of worry on my end of like if we have too many talks with lost ancient high technology people, all of a sudden we can't have talks with academics. So
Yeah.
how to go about it in the right way. And
Yeah, there should be an open dialogue, you know? It should be like a space where we're all learning together. But unfortunately, there's a lot of tribalism involved where people choose sides. And then once you've convinced yourself that your theory is correct, then it's easy for you to want to defend your standpoint and then judge others.
Just gonna pause it right there. A couple of things were said. Safe space, being wrong, tribalism, and theories. I've been part of this community for a while now. I've just been in the comment section, and this ride has been very intense for me. And I've realized something really important in regards to this collision between these two camps, the Orthodox camp and the ancient high tech camp, is that this battle, this clash, is one of the most important things that is happening on the internet right now regarding archaeology. Because through this clash, all of these channels are learning, and millions of people in orbit around these channels are learning. So we can't take this battle seriously. This is just a game, and we're all in it together. And the word theory was just used, theories. When I think of that word, I think of like quantum mechanics. I don't think theory can be applied to this topic because what we're dealing here with is stone and evidence of ancient high technology in stone or the lack of evidence of ancient high technology in stone. So as more analysis, scientific analysis of stone comes in and is coming in, this this vagueness, by calling it theory, will be formed into an absolute reality and ultimate truth about this subject. Do we have presence of ancient high technology on this planet, in Egypt, Peru, elsewhere, or do we not? And on this channel, I'm going to focus a little bit on stone because I have experience in stone. So this is the ancient presence. This is, sort of the Orthodox camp here, Casey and Milo here, and I just wanted to address their work, their three-part series on the Serapeum, and what they've done. We're going to start from the back and sort of move forward. They did a lot of work on record of the dynastic period on the Serapeum, the Apis Bowl data set, and that the French dude found some rollers and winches, which is, again, some huge bit of evidence in their eyes that these boxes were manufactured by the dynastic period, which I do not believe that to be evidence of anything at all, other than maybe those boxes were moved or attempts to move those boxes were made. And then this is sort of the smoking gun evidence that some king had this rose granite box made for, the Apis bull. First of all, this is a rose granite box that has nothing to do with the granodiorite boxes that are present in the Serapeum. Second, since we're operating under the assumption, the ancient high technology community operating under the assumption that this complex was appropriated by the dynastic period and everything in it of significance was also appropriated, including these boxes, this king could have just lied. I mean, why would you leave a historical record that you jacked some box, or that you just stole it and dedicated it into the Apis bull in a religious ceremony? So how this is a smoking gun evidence that these boxes were manufactured by a dynastic period, I don't know. And in any way, if we do determine that there are stone anomalies on these boxes, then all of this work that they did in terms of the dynastic period and the record on them is nullified. Okay, you would have to agree with me. If we absolutely determine that there are stone anomalies present that have nothing to do with chisels and copper drag marks on these boxes, then we have to dismiss all of your work, all of your 3 parts. That's all I wanted to say about this smoking gun section, and let's move to stone, the very thing that I know.
Researchers everywhere can contribute to these kinds of investigations and help us all to gain a better understanding of these matters. The independent research team from Russia, called the ACIDA Project, did exactly that.
So long story short, the ACIDA went down there and measured these boxes, measured the exterior of these boxes for some reason. This camp, the academic, the orthodox camp, that the dynastic period did this all, have made a colossal mistake by latching onto the idea that refuting precision of these boxes determines that that high tech was not utilized there. In other words, determining these boxes are in fact imprecise excludes machinery. I'm part of the high-tech community, and I do not believe these boxes were made with machines. Machines is our technology, and it's a fairly primitive technology. You plug in this device into AC, and you hit these boxes with a diamond blade that, self-destructs fairly quickly. So I do not believe these boxes were made with machinery, and I do not believe that determining that they're imprecise is a valid argument for anything. But this community has successfully latched onto this, and there's been a terabyte of videos put out on the imprecision of the Serapeum.
The imperfections in the boxes become even more clear when observing distortions in the light reflecting off the stone surfaces. This lid here has some really wonky surfaces on it, and its edges are anything but straight. Same thing on this lid. And what's going on here with all these trippy contours and strange shapes? If these stones were cut with high-speed machine saws, there's no way that the tool would leave behind all of these imperfections.
Right. How could you leave this imperfection with a chisel? This is obviously intentional work on these boxes. All of the indentations are intentional. Since these boxes are fractureless, these indentations have to do with fracture and crack removal. So this is a silly argument that they're imprecise because of these fractures, and the manufacturers were just so bad that they couldn't even make a straight wall. And this is a silly argument. Let's continue. It's not the point here.
And these are some of the nicest boxes. Keep in mind that a bunch of them weren't even polished, and 2 of them...
So this box had obviously nubs that were manufactured by the original manufacturer of this box, and these knobs were removed in the act of vandalism, clearly by chisels. So I do not believe that this is part of the manufacturing process of this box. This is just the dynastic period knocking off these knobs for maybe use in something else. So, but again, you see these little micro chisel striations that we'll see again in a second here.
Them have extremely rough surfaces and edges. You can also still see the chisel marks that show these were
Again, those micro chisel marks that do not tell me that the manufacturers used chisels here. Absolutely not. Somebody might have just scratched it later, tried to take off some material, maybe shaved off another chunk here. Try and take it home.
clearly made by hand. Really beautiful works of art that exhibit extremely high levels of craftsmanship. The many sharp edges, mirror-like polish, and sheer scale of these boxes is enough to baffle modern researchers. But that doesn't mean you have to have a machine tool to make them. Through our research, it seems most probable that these boxes were created by the dynastic Egyptians. But is it even possible that they could be made using the tools that are found in the archaeological record? Let's take a look at some stone cutting experiments and see if we can solve this puzzle.
To manufacture a stone sarcophagus, you basically have three main steps. First, you need to cut the exterior shape of the box, then you need to hollow out its interior, and then polish its surfaces flat. To shape the outside of the box, you basically need to make 6 straight cuts for the external faces on the top, the bottom, and the 4 outer sides, and then 1 for the lid as well. Experimental archaeologist Dennis Stocks has demonstrated that 2 people can make large, straight cuts through granite relatively easily, albeit very slowly, with a...
The slowly is not the issue here. This saw loses half a kg of material in 14 hours. These copper drag saws absolutely self-destruct themselves. I have a 10-minute video on this already, and you would go through 1 saw per 1 cut of like 3.5 feet of granite or basalt. So these saws are absolutely absurd, ridiculous, hilarious, and Dennis Stocks debunked himself with this experiment, and this is a valuable experiment because we could see just how useless these copper saws are. Again, in 14 days you would be gone through half of this saw. 14 days of 14-hour shifts. Half this saw is gone. You know, in 21 days you would have a little bit of it that would now be bending as you're cutting it, so you would have to remanufacture the saw, and you wouldn't even be through this block that they're cutting. So this is an absurd method of cutting. That's not the point that I'm going to make in this video. I just wanted to, since we're showed this saw, wanted to make a couple comments on it.
The copper saw that's either smooth or that has teeth, and using sand as an abrasive. It's not actually the copper that does the cutting though. The saw merely drags and grinds the sand back and forth.
The saw does the cutting too, buddy. That's why it self-destructs as it goes through this slab. If you eliminate the saw out of this cut, you wouldn't be going anywhere with the sand. So this saw is doing the cutting, the sand is acting as an abrasive. The sand is enhancing this cut, but you could cut these blocks without the sand.
And the hard quartz crystals within the sand are the abrasive material that actually does the cutting. Stocks has done many stone cutting experiments through the years and has achieved fantastic results using nothing but primitive tools, which he documents in his book called Experiments in Egyptian Archaeology, as well as in his lectures. In this Naked Science documentary, his experiments showed they could cut through granite at a rate of 2 cubic inches per hour.
I already left a comment in regards to this 2 cubic inches per hour. 2 cubic inches per hour is not a feed rate into granite. Feed rates are typically stated in millimeters per hour, inches per hour. Cubic inches per hour is material removal rate. It doesn't mean anything.
And he estimated that it would take about 4 months to carve out the outer shape of the sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid. That sarcophagus is much smaller than those in the Serapeum, but by
So we got through the copper drag saws and the chisel marks that are apparently all over the boxes, correct? So you've implicated copper drag saws and chisels in the manufacturing process of the boxes of the Serapeum. And I'm about to exclude both of those in a single clip by Uncharted X, Chapter 4.
Something like this, but after it's done, it looks...
Tell me, do you see a single chisel mark on this box? Do you see a single saw cut on this box? We know what saws do to granite, granodiorite, basalt. They leave smooth surfaces, ready to be finished and polished.
like it's melted down, and it's not.
Yes.
Do you see any chisel marks on this box? Any saw cuts on this box? Saws were not utilized in the manufacturing of these boxes. Neither were chisels. What you're seeing here is a massive stone anomaly. These boxes were shaped by some kind of boring tech, rough boring tech. Think of a sandblaster that's spewing out larger chunks of material, just proposing. Sandblaster that had enormous power and could be used as a precision tool. This box was already shaped into this final shape without any saws, without any copper chisels. This is a nearly finished box. The next phases that would be applied to it would be the finer flattening and polishing applications.
What is happening here?
What is happening here? How do you make this with a copper drag saw? Do you see any chisel marks? Anybody who's ever cut stone, I know you're going to make the argument, well, they could have used saws after this, right? First they got it like this, and now they're going to use the saw on it. Why would you go through all of that work making it so precise if you're going to start hitting it with saws again? Anybody who's ever cut stone knows that taking off a little bit of material here with a saw would be a bitch. Saw would be coming out, slipping out. So you would have to grab, 2-3 inches of material on the inside with a saw. And anyway, why would you go through all of that process with a saw again if you already have the box perfectly cut? This is a massive stone anomaly in the Serapeum. The secrets of the Serapeum do not lie in precision, they lie in the imprecision. And of course, you boys have missed it because you have no experience in stone. You had your mind made up, there is no lost ancient high tech, and you started making an internet collage. But this is incredible. This has nothing to do with machining, in my eyes. Classical machining, the way we think of machining. And I think this boring tech was being implemented everywhere. Tunneling, Aswan obelisk, and in the manufacturing of these boxes. And of course, we're looking at Chapter 4 of Uncharted X, where he displays him and Yusuf look at evidence for liquid polish. How is it then all of your work that you've conducted on the Serapeum, you've just omitted this? This doesn't stand? This is nothing?
This is where we found that there was a liquid, some kind of liquid. So the liquid leaks down here and then forms these lines with drops.
We have two people there touching it with their fingers and saying that those drops are polished and the other surfaces around them are not polished. I mean, this is serious, right? And forensic technical analysis will go into these drips. And once it is determined that on one surface it's absolutely polished and on a microscopic level there's a line that switches to non-polished, it will be conclusive that liquid polishing was utilized here. And that will kill everything. This whole camp should just, wrap up their gear and quit once it is determined that there is a microscopic barrier between polished and non-polished, because you'll never be able to do that by hand. And I'm sure that microscopic barrier is there. So you're walking a real thin line here. And I mean, there's been an avalanche of work already coming in. These videos of yours are a year old, right? The vases have come in. And this camp, your camp, the academics, the orthodox, the SGDs, the scientists against myths will be buried in the avalanche of LiDAR scans and more forensic analysis into this stonework. That's all I wanted to say for this segment. Thank you. You'll see me again.